Imagine you're walking through a river valley in the Middle East. 90,000 years ago, you've been tracking a herd for 2 days. Your group is spread out behind you, quiet, careful, and then you see movement on the far ridge. Not an animal, a person, but not quite. The brow is heavier than yours, the nose is wider. The body is shorter, thicker, built like it was made for cold you've never felt. For a second, neither of you moves. You don't know if this is a threat, a stranger, or something in between. You are looking at a Neanderthal, and they are looking back at you. This moment happened, not once, but thousands of times across tens of thousands of years, in valleys and caves and coastlines all over Eurasia. And what happened next in these encounters didn't just shape two species, it shaped what you are today, right now, reading this. For most of human history, we thought we were always alone. One species, walking a lonely path to the top. That's not what happened. And the real story is stranger, more violent and more intimate than almost anyone expected. Today, when you think about other humans, you think about other people, different countries, different languages, same species. You've never had to wonder if the person across the valley from you was even the same kind of being. But 100,000 years ago, that question was real. Homo sapiens shared this planet with at least two other groups of humans we know of by name, the Neanderthals and the Denisovans, and possibly more we haven't identified yet. And when our ancestors ran into them, three things could happen. They could fight, they could avoid each other entirely, or they could come together. All three happened, sometimes in the same regions, a few thousand years apart. The first threat was violence. Modern humans arriving from Africa were not always welcomed. At a site called Shanidar Cave in Iraq, researchers examined a Neanderthal skeleton known as Shanidar 3. He had a sharp, deep wound sliced into his left ninth rib. The researcher who studied it, Stephen Churchill, was careful about his conclusion. He wasn't claiming a war, but he said the injury pattern matched a projectile weapon, and only one of the two species in that valley had projectile weapons. That points to at least one act of violence between the two. A second Neanderthal skeleton, found in France and dated to around 36,000 years ago, shows a scalp wound likely caused by a sharp object, possibly delivered by a modern human. So the danger was real. But it wasn't the only outcome. The second possibility was avoidance. In some regions, Neanderthals and modern humans seem to have simply missed each other by centuries, arriving and leaving the same valleys at different times, like two tenants who never overlapped leases. Archaeological layers in parts of Europe show modern human tools appearing only after the last Neanderthal tools stop. No clear moment of contact at all. And the third possibility, the one almost nobody expects, is that they fell in love. Or at least, they mated. Here's where the story turns. In 2010, researchers sequenced the Neanderthal genome from bone fragments found in a cave in Croatia. When they compared it to modern human DNA, they found something nobody was fully prepared for. Living people of European and East Asian descent carry between 1 and 2% Neanderthal DNA in their genes. People from sub-Saharan Africa carry essentially none, meaning their ancestors never crossed paths with Neanderthals at all. This wasn't a one-time accident. It happened again and again in different places over tens of thousands of years. The earliest known physical evidence comes from Skhul Cave on Mount Carmel in Israel, a child skeleton roughly 140,000 years old, showing a mix of Neanderthal and modern human features. Not just genetic evidence. An actual mixed ancestry child, buried by people who cared enough to bury her. Then there's Ust-Ishim man, a modern human who lived in Siberia about 45,000 years ago. When researchers sequenced his genome, they found his Neanderthal DNA segments were unusually long, longer than what we see in living people today. Long segments mean fewer generations have passed to break them up through recombination. Using that, scientists calculated that Ust-Ishim's Neanderthal ancestor lived just 10,000 years before he did. His grandparents, in a sense, had met. And then there's the most extreme case of all, a jawbone found in Romania in 2002, from a man now called Oase 1, who lived roughly 40,000 years ago. When his genome was sequenced, researchers found he had a Neanderthal ancestor only 4 to 6 generations back. Between 6 and 9% of his entire genome was Neanderthal. His great-great-grandparent, roughly speaking, was a different species. So the encounters weren't rare. They were happening constantly. constantly in bedrooms and camps and river valleys across the entire span of human expansion out of Africa. But the Neanderthals weren't the only ones out there. In 2010, in a cave in southern Siberia called Denisova Cave, researchers extracted ancient DNA from a tiny fragment of a pinky bone. They expected Neanderthal. It wasn't. It belonged to a completely unknown group of humans, Üçağızlı, one we still don't have a proper name for. We know them today only as the Denisovans, and we know them from just 7 bones and 1 jawbone found across Siberia and the Tibetan Plateau. 7 bones. That's the entire physical record of an entire branch of humanity. And yet, their DNA tells a story almost as intimate as the Neanderthals. Today, small amounts of Denisovan DNA show up across East and South Asia. And in some populations of Melanesians in the Southwest Pacific, it reaches up to 6% of the entire genome. This means Homo sapiens didn't just meet one other species of human on their journey around the planet, they met at least 2, and they mated with both. But mating is easy to measure. It leaves a signature in DNA forever. What's harder to see and far more interesting is what happened in between. Because it turns out these species didn't just cross paths and vanish into each other's bloodlines. In some places, they built something close to a shared life. At Üçağızlı Cave on the coast of modern Turkey, archaeologists spent 5 years excavating layer by layer. Neanderthals occupied the cave from roughly 77,000 to 59,000 years ago. Then Homo sapiens moved into the exact same space, from about 59,000 down to 47,000 years ago. When researchers compared nearly 20,000 stone tools from every layer, the toolkit barely changed no matter which species had made it, passed down like the cave itself was teaching each new tenant how to live in it. Then there were the shells. Both species, thousands of years apart, collected the exact same kind of marine shell. Not for food. These had no nutritional value at all, just for the sake of having them. Researchers now think this wasn't coincidence. It looks like a tradition, quietly inherited from one species to the next. 2 kinds of human bending down on the same beach for the same pointless, beautiful reason. That's not instinct. That's culture crossing a species line. It goes deeper than shells. At Tinshemet Cave in Israel, researchers found something not seen from this period in 50 years. Deliberate, formal burial. Bodies laid to rest with care. Red ochre placed beside them, used purely for meaning, not survival. And this custom didn't belong to one species. Both Neanderthals and Homo sapiens in the region appear to have shared it. Researchers studying the site say contact between the two didn't just happen. It pushed both species toward more symbolism, more ritual, more social complexity. So picture the full range. In one valley, a spear thrown in anger, a rib bone scarred for 50,000 years. In another cave, centuries of quiet handoffs, one species using tools the last one left behind. And in another, 2 species burying their dead the same way, painted with the same ochre, by people who may never have shared a word of language. Violence happened, avoidance happened. But so did something that looks like neighbors, sharing fires, tools, and rituals for the dead, for over 20,000 years in some corners of the world. We've told this as a story about who won. Modern humans on top, everyone else extinct, end of story. But the caves aren't describing a contest. They're describing an overlap. Species close enough, for long enough, that their tools blurred together and their traditions blurred together, long before their DNA ever did. They didn't just cross paths with us on the way to extinction. For thousands of years, they lived beside us. And in that overlap, the shared shells, the shared fires, the shared graves, is the real answer to what ancient humans did when they met another human species. They didn't just survive each other. They built something together without knowing history would erase everyone involved except one.